Hi, everybody. Thank you again for joining us today. Hopefully this will provide some insight and some good information and strategies to tackle your archives. Many facilities groups have thousands of documents, hard copy and electronic, and the idea of scanning and entering all the metadata for each one is a very daunting, almost an impossible task. It takes resources to do this, and right now in this day and age of COVID and budget cuts and staffing changes, it may be even more seemingly impossible or difficult. But on the flip side, now might be a great time to start tackling your archives in some way because projects have maybe wound down a little bit more. It's kind of a timing issue on some of these things. But by utilizing Meridian, which is what we're going to talk about for the system for archive documents, the wide-reaching benefits across the organization are really priceless. The topics we're going to cover today, we're going to talk about the benefits of using Meridian as the document management system, configuration strategy for Meridian, tackling the archive rooms full of paper documents, getting the electronic documents into Meridian, and the benefits of utilizing our company for assistance with your analysis and your implementation of your software. The reason I'm going in this order with the starting point of Meridian is because you want to begin with the end in mind. So you want to start at the end result, and you'll understand more as we go along. So why use Meridian as your archive solution? Makes documents easy to find based on the metadata properties at the document level. Metadata properties describe the document in ways of, example, locations, equipment, maybe discipline, or types of plans, floor plans, details, cover sheets, things like that. It's also accessible via mobile devices as well as on your desktop via the web. We leverage data from other systems of record. So if you already have a CMMS system, we can leverage that data so that it's a seamless transition of data. So you have the same equipment numbers across the systems. There's configurable security, and there's document retention policies that can be set up within Meridian for ease of use and to keep track of some of your archive information that is no longer necessary to keep. Finding documents, that's the first piece of any puzzle. Using a standard Windows search, you can either go directly to the folder and go down and hope that you find the document you need. You could also do a Windows search, which is traditionally how people find specific documents, by using the Windows search bar up at the top, and you can pick the folder, but you might get a large search result and still have to go through that folder because it's based on what's in the description more times than not. So it's not really as specific as you need. You still have to scroll through maybe hundreds of documents. With Meridian, we simplify that. Once the documents are in Meridian, you can easily search by any of the metadata properties that you configure in the system. And so for this example, I've picked the building name, the classification, which means the type of document, what category it falls into, and the discipline. So old main, closeout, and electrical. I get a search result after hitting the button, and notice there are the 3 columns that I typed into my search. There's 30 documents. This may retrieve 100 documents, and you may want to further refine your search, which is easy to do within Meridian. I have the same search results, and I added a subclass of it's a closeout document, it's the operations and maintenance manual for the exact same building and discipline, and then I hit the search and it refined it to the single document. You might get a few O&Ms, but you'll always see the latest and greatest and be able to sort by those documents. You can access these documents from anywhere. The most usable function for operation maintenance staff in the field is the mobile application. You can access the most up-to-date information from here, similar to the Explorer that you just saw. You can find documents that are related to assets or assets related to data. It talks to each other and searches easily between systems. We can do those integrations between your CMMS where you're on an equipment record, and you can run the search from there and it'll search those documents containing that information. And you can also scan asset barcodes or QR codes if your organization utilizes these on equipment to run the search within the mobile device. I've mentioned leveraging other systems of record. I want to dive into that a little bit more. You have Meridian, which contains all of your documents, floor plans, maps, models, warranties, technical reports, anything you can think of, you can put in Meridian. And you might have these other systems that other departments use. And all of that can feed into a different system and then into Meridian so that we can leverage the location data, the project data, equipment data. And you can run searches from all of these other systems into Meridian. We can configure that. And then you can view the results either on your desktop or via the mobile, as we saw. There's Configurable Security. You can do this with a Windows folder structure, but it generally needs to go through IT. Whereas in Meridian, you can configure this ahead of time. You can also configure it on your AD groups, but then you can add people to certain roles and responsibilities and groups within Meridian to give them certain privileges and authority within the system to see documents or edit documents. There's different levels of what you can do within those, but it's all configurable and it's a lot more secure than a Windows system, and you can see what documents have changed based on revision levels. Document retention policies, as I mentioned, there's configurable policies to align with your organizational guidelines and standards. Some documents must be kept quite a bit longer than others, so you can set these up by what we call document types or classifications down to that level. Moving on to the configuration strategy, it seems a little early to talk about even configuring a Meridian system when you're not even sure how to tackle the paper. But it is important to think big picture here. Where do you want to put those documents and how do you want to put them in? You don't want to focus just on your existing archives because that was what was done in the past, and it's probably not the best way to do it, the most efficient. You can't really find things. So this is an opportunity to make that archival information usable. And any new incoming documentation will become the archival information when that project is completed. There's also a big picture strategy of other departments or groups. Archives may be one piece of your organization, but you might also have a construction group, an operations and maintenance group, even HR that may be able to benefit from also using Meridian as their system for documents. You want to think about the ideal scenario. What worked in the past more than likely has some kinks in it and may not be working all that great. So now is the time to look at your business process and your systems and make those changes to make it seem like you've always been using Meridian since the beginning of the archives, which in some cases might be 1800s. We have a couple customers that have documents that old, but they're in Meridian and it seems like they've always been there. The ideal scenario is to also eliminate the silos from departments and groups and to streamline transfer of information. If your archives are in Meridian and you set up security so that people that are commonly searching for documents can get in there, they have all the access they need to anything. And they don't come to the archivist every time they need to search for something. When we talk about configuration strategy, we also need to talk about which documents are important to your organization. We have some higher ed universities and some customers that only save a portion of their documents in Meridian, such as closeout. They focus on closeout because that's the most important. We have other universities that use this as a living system for all project documents, contracts, RFIs, drawings, of course, and closeout documents. So there's a level of which documents are important to your organization. And once you get those in place, you can always expand into others. A determining factor in what documents are important are what the consumers are consistently looking for. If you have operations and maintenance staff that are consistently looking for the latest and greatest warranties or the latest and greatest preventative maintenance plans, which I know are in your CMMS, but the output can be in Meridian, those are things you need to take into account when you think about what documents you're going to enter into Meridian. And once those documents are in, how would they be able to search efficiently on those documents? What pieces of metadata are important to retrieving documents? Most of the time, it's buildings, floors, equipment numbers. The date is important. And you can go on and on with disciplines, systems, drawing types. We can add any kind of information, but what is necessary to be searched on? Those are the priorities you want to line out ahead of time. And this helps you think about the configuration of Meridian. How do you achieve the success with this configuration? You do all these things we talked about, and we help you determine the right software and tools and the options that are available to you. We don't just come in and say, here's your system, use it. We actually work through processes with you to analyze whether this is the right system, and if it is, the right way to use it for your organization. And then we also help prioritize the implementation of phases. Many times there's the big picture, and here's what we want to achieve, but we only have budget for this much or time for this much. We can help phase that in so that you can use the system to its full capacity sometime in the future. Here's the meat and potatoes of why you're here in this presentation, how to tackle the too much paper in your archive room. Most organizations have tons of paper because we didn't always have computers or electronic documents. And many times that is where the best history is kept about a building, about a project. You may not need to reference the O&M manuals as much in these cases, but the building floor plans are usually pretty critical. Again, you want to talk about which documents must you keep. When you're tackling an archive room, you need to prioritize what can go and what can stay. That's the first step in any organizing project, which is what this is to determine what you need to keep, which you've already talked about if we've talked about configuration strategy. There are document retention policies for regulatory agencies that you need to take into account. I listed a few, I'm sure there's many more, plus your organizational retention policy or insurance requirements possibly. For universities, I know there's a lot of guidelines for any funding that comes from the state as well as federal. And I know FDA has some pretty strict regulatory requirements that need to be met. Again, what documents are being looked for? In addition to what has to be kept legally, you want to save anything that people might be useful in the future for your business to run. Like I said, when you're going through this, you may not need meeting minutes if you've saved those. Those can probably go away at this point. People aren't looking for that. They're looking for drawings, O&Ms, technical information. One thing you might also be required to keep if your organization is the authority having jurisdiction, which basically means your group issues the building permits and does the inspections. Those are also important to keep in your archive. You want to prioritize the newest first. So you don't want to start at the beginning of time and start working through those documents because those probably aren't as important as a certain point in time. If you start at the beginning and you are an organization that has been around for many, many, many years, it will be even more impossible to make any progress or seem to make any progress with the culling of the paper. The big one here is your staff. Staffing is challenging, as I mentioned, especially now with, I know, higher education budget cuts and funds that had to be diverted due to COVID-19 shifts in configuration of rooms and how they can do their work efficiently. So that's always a challenge for people, but you have to look at that. What kind of staffing do you have? And can you allot time from that staff to tackle some of these documents? Or is it something you can easily contract out to a company once you decide what you have to keep, what those documents are, and get those piles in order? Then you're going to try to figure out who's going to scan all these documents. And it might be the same staff that is going through and sorting through the documents. There might be a process in place to tackle it by building, sort them by project, do them piece by piece, and get them scanned. The important piece of the scanning is to remember what we decided in the configuration strategy of what metadata is important, because you don't want to have to touch the documents multiple times. You almost want to scan them in such a way that the file names contain priority metadata, and maybe you keep a spreadsheet with other miscellaneous pieces of data that you might want to enter when we move them into Meridian. So how do you do that? Well, we configure your system first, and you come up with a plan in order to get them in, again, based on the metadata and the priority. There is human involvement required. There is no magic button. We have some tools to help, but there is no magic button once the scans are in for it to automatically enter meaningful and accurate metadata, hence the staffing conversation previous. Your staff should be familiar with the types of documents that are going into Meridian, and if you're using the same staff that culled the documents and scanned them and really was familiar and came up with a strategic plan to capture information, they will be. They also need to be up to speed with the configuration of Meridian. Again, that's that metadata and what needs to be captured. And they need to understand how the system works and the why behind it, which is part of the strategic goal of the entire project. And they also need to have a clear understanding of some timelines. You may not know that right away, but there might be a way to break it into manageable pieces, and those are the goals. We do have tools and processes that are available to assist in the loading of these documents. Depending on your configuration of Meridian, there's a few options. We have something called IntelliPort. There's also import packages within Meridian, and both of these use a similar concept where you fill out an Excel spreadsheet based on project. So you break your drawing sets down to projects, and you can fill out a spreadsheet and import those documents into Meridian, and with a few clicks of the button, they're in. The piece prior to that is everything we've talked about up to this point. A human will need to know that information. So it makes sense to keep the process going and somehow tie in some of these other things that you know will be coming into that initial look at your archive and culling of those documents. There's also some bulk loading assistance, again, depending on your configuration and how much metadata you are trying to capture. There is a service that works well with that, primarily with the cloud option. So why choose Hagerman and Company? We've implemented hundreds of successful Meridian configurations in many, many industries for many people that consistently come back to us to improve their systems. We have the experience and expertise not only in the configurations, but also in the industry standards for those particular groups. We also have some business process analysis experience to help you align those two together, the system and your business process. And we provide some organizing strategies, as I've discussed above. If that's part of one of your needs, we can definitely talk about those strategies and how to achieve that success with scanning, saving, deciding. We create solutions that are tailored to our customers. It's not a one-size-fits-all scenario, and we offer a wide variety of solutions. So we really listen to what your challenges are and how you do business, and we help you decide, maybe this isn't the right system for what we particularly do. We have options. We don't just slam you with a product and say, here you go, here's how it works, you figure it out. We're there with you the entire step of the way, and we support you afterwards. When there are questions, we keep you informed of updates. We really try to make a relationship out of this experience. Short and sweet. I'll open it up to questions at this point. If you have any, enter them in the chat bar, and we will get there. I'm not seeing any. I'm not sure if anybody's typing any, but we'll give it a few more minutes. Or if there's anything you would like me to go back to, please let me know. I'm not seeing any questions, so I thank all of you, and I'll hand it back over to Ashley.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Thank you all for attending today. If you think of additional questions later, you can simply reply to that confirmation or reminder email you received from GoToWebinar. We can get those to Jennifer or your sales rep to get your questions answered. Once again, there will be a short survey as we close down today, and you will receive an email tomorrow with the recording for today's presentation. Thanks and have a great day, everybody.